Good afternoon. My name is Kiecha Berzins, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications here at FoodLogiq. We're so glad you could join us today for our industry webinar, which is entitled Creating a Connected Cold Chain. We have two terrific guests with us who have a wealth of knowledge to share when it comes to the topics of food safety and the very unique aspect of the food safety supply chain that is known as the cold chain. But first, let's cover some webinar logistics. On the screen, you're going to see registration information, the dial-in number, and the access code. And due to the large number of participants today, phone lines will remain muted during the presentation. But if you have any questions during the webinar, please submit those at any time using the questions panel, and we will answer these at the end of the webinar as much as we can. For those of you who may not be familiar with FoodLogiq, since 2006, our company has been developing solutions that meet the complex issues facing our ever-changing global food chain, as well as the vast web of regulations that face all modern food companies. At FoodLogiq, our mission is to map the world's food chain, make it as safe as possible, and empower people to make informed decisions about the food they eat. Our technology enables supplier management, food safety compliance, quality incident management, recall management, and whole chain traceability, all on a single platform called Connect, which was built exclusively for the food industry. So as I mentioned, today's industry webinar hosted by FoodLogiq is entitled Creating a Connected Cold Chain, and now I'm very pleased to introduce our guests for today's discussion, Mr. Eric Moore and Dr. Donna Garren. Eric is the Director of Food Safety and Regulatory Compliance at Testo Solutions of North America, which is a valued business partner to FoodLogiq. So Eric, we're glad to have you.
Yes, thank you, Kiecha, and thank you, Dr. Delphin, for allowing me to be on the conference call with you guys. Just to give everybody an idea of my background, I've been working in the public health arena of the food industry for the last 18 years in roles of various increased responsibility. I've worked for a major national retail organization, as well as two of the world's largest food service management organizations. There, I have been able to gain a tremendous amount of both operational understanding from a food safety execution perspective, as well as gain valuable knowledge and insight on the development and communication of food safety management programs, from actually writing standard operating procedures and training manuals to managing third-party audit programs and pest control vendors, as well as chemical providers. For those on the call that may not be familiar with Testo, the organization that I am part of, we are the world leader in the design and development and the manufacturing of portable, handheld measurement instrumentation and sensor technology. The company has been around for going on 60 years now. Its global headquarters is based in the Black Forest in Germany, and our North American office is based in Westchester, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. My role with Testo is to focus on industry and regulatory outreach, as well as provide practical and usable feedback to our research and development group as it relates to our food instrumentation and software. So thank you very much again for allowing me to participate, and I'll hand things over to Donna.
Thank you so much, Eric. And Donna, we'd love to hear about your role as well. Donna is the Executive Vice President of Science and Policy for the American Frozen Foods Institute, or AFFI, which is a nonprofit organization based in Arlington, Virginia. So Donna, thank you so much for being with us today. So if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at AFFI.
Thanks, Kiecha. Yes. So I am with American Frozen Food Institute, as was mentioned, And I primarily do regulatory and legislative work on behalf of the frozen food industry, and our association represents companies throughout the supply chain of the frozen category, from those that are growing product in the field all the way through to the retail food service end of the chain. So we address a number of complex issues. Primarily, a lot of our time is being dedicated to food safety efforts in our industry as it relates to Listeria monocytogenes. My background, I have over 20 years of experience in the food safety regulatory space, and started off my career working for a fresh fruit and vegetable company in California, but primarily my career has been based in association management, working for a number of trade associations here in D.C., addressing regulatory policy and legislative policy issues for different sectors. I started off in the fresh produce industry, working for United Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Association. I've worked for the National Restaurant Association, the Consumer Goods Forum, and now with the American Frozen Food Institute. And I also had a time where I was in charge of doing food safety auditing and consulting to the produce industry with my work with NSF International. So, but I would say in regards to the information I can bring to the webinar today is really how the supply chain is connected. And as it relates to regulatory and food safety concerns, there's a lot of challenges that our food supply faces as it moves from basically the farm gate to the plate.
Well, thank you so much, Donna, and thank you, Eric. Our FoodLogiq team is really happy that you're both here to share your expertise on how people can create a connected cold chain. But before we get into the weeds of discussing the intricacies of creating a cold chain and how that works, let's talk about a broader topic, today's food supply chain. So on the screen, you'll see a graphic that shows really just how complicated the product journey has become. There are so many stakeholders involved. This looks like the beginning of a complicated math problem. So Donna and Eric, I was wondering, why is today's food supply chain so complex? And Eric, if you want to take that first.
I'll jump in here if that's all right. I think one of the easier ways to describe this is just the fact that consumer demand today for food and diverse food compared to our options, just 10 or 20 years ago, has really just continued to increase, and it's really never been higher, and it really just is expected to continue to grow. And with the population growth, that is also creating a lot of challenges as well. The basic consumer today expects to be able to purchase leafy greens or various different types of produce like strawberries, in the middle of winter. Which, historically, from an agricultural perspective, you weren't able to have access to that, 25, 30 years ago in such readily fashion. And to meet those demands, companies are importing more and more food from all over the globe. And that increases with the level of complexity and challenges as well. And to add to the complexity, the supply and demand dynamics involved for organizations sourcing things from the other side of the globe, or even right down the streets, have just become a lot more challenging. Not to even take into consideration geopolitical politics, weather, and other types of communication challenges that can lead to long periods of communication challenges. I'm sorry, but they can also become impractical and consume a lot of a company's resources with trying to get things from one place to another. And with that complexity comes, the challenge for exchanging information and being able to provide that information in a rapid and readily form. And doing that via paper can be kind of challenging. Donna?
Sure. Obviously, I think you stated it pretty well. It is very complex, and it's based on this ever-changing and evolving consumer demands for fresh product. And, you've got consumers that want fresh and local, and then you've got consumers that want ethnic food, and it's just a very diverse consumer demands for different products, which means that you are sourcing snow peas from Guatemala, avocados from Mexico, spices from India, and, Alaskan pollock. So it's just across the board, all those different products that have a very, in some cases, very limited shelf life and a very high value associated with their product. Also, from a regulatory and food safety perspective, the traceability and understanding how information is transferred from one entity to the next can be very complex. And also ensuring that, that those buyer-supplier relationships are verifying indeed that they have programs in place that are ensuring the safety and quality of those products as they move along the supply chain. And temperature is a big component of making sure that it arrives to its final destination, be it to a processing facility for further processing or to a retail or food service entity where you're getting, fresh mahi-mahi from Hawaii by plane, or you're getting tomatoes that may have been regionally sourced in Mexico, commingled in California, and then brought through several different brokers until it would end up in your local retail operation. So it's just ever evolving and complex supply chain that we need to have, ever evolving and innovative technologies that can give us that real time information to make sure that we're doing the best job possible for tracking and tracing products as they move along the chain.
Great. Well, that's great perspective on the overall complexity of the global food chain. It's not just from point A to point B to point C anymore. It's a tangled web that can be extremely complex. But I'd like to dive a little bit deeper about that topic. What are some of the biggest challenges in specifically the food cold chain today? Donna, what would you provide?
Sure.
Maybe some examples of that?
Yeah. Well, the perishability of products, again, temperature is a big component of that. And when you're talking in our industry, the frozen food sector, temperature is essential to ensure the quality and safety of those products. And you look at that in regards to a challenge from an operations standpoint, through the trucker who's bringing it from, say, the processor to a distribution center and then on to the either retail or food service entity, maintaining that temperature so that you don't see any kind of loss in quality of that product or heating up to the point where it is potentially unsafe or just you lose that quality. It is looking for those technologies, be it time temperature devices or traceability, and there's a lot of discussion in regards to how you're going to share that information in real time as it's moving along the chain, measuring the temperature as it goes, and obviously Eric can talk a little bit about that, and all that occurs, and it takes people and it takes technology to make that effort. And both of those right now are challenges for the industry. There's shortages of people that are trained in order to have those expertise, and there's some really good companies out there. Obviously FoodLogiQ and Testo creating some innovative ways to help the industry with these challenges. It is something right now where technology is often outpacing, our ability to use it. So, we even are, looking at using Google Glass as a technology to kind of help with these kind of issues that we see, and how can we use these real-time devices to help us with these challenges. But I would say the need for ever-evolving technologies and people and temperature is real big challenges for us.
Mm-hmm. And Eric, from your perspective at Testo, what would you say some of the big challenges are for the cold chain?
So I think the high cost of cold chain storage, transportation, and in-transit temperature management is what we consider to be the major challenge, especially when there isn't as much due diligence placed around this during the sourcing process, which can occasionally lead to some less than trustworthy vendors or suppliers being chosen by organizations. That can lead to problems such as not having awareness of product time to expiration. If you have situations in the supply process, the cold chain supply process, where there's no data relative to transportation temperatures being monitored or even observed, you really don't have the whole picture of that product's or that shipment's life, and that can have detrimental effects sort of further downstream. There are numerous things that can affect it, weather and import fees and pauses and things like that. Really the perspective that we at Testo take is that, in a perfect world, a company is going to be able to leverage partners that in a cold chain system that can all actively engage in practices that collect temperature data and have the functionality to share it in as close to real time as possible, so that if there are, problems, alert notifications can go out and measures can be taken to react to those in a much quicker fashion. And this, systems like this, they really help support more of a continuous improvement process, which is the direction that, especially within the U.S. through FSMA regulations, wanting to see more preventive or requiring to see more preventative control measures in place, it tends to lead to a more preventative situation rather than a reactive situation, which in the grand scheme of things leads to more sustainable product and supply chain processes, which should in time build and ensure consumer confidence in an organization and their products.
That real-time aspect seems to be just a key component that you're able to make business decisions on the turn of a dime based on that real-time information. It seems like it's not a nice to have. It seems like it should be a must-have. So that seems like while there's a big challenge, that real-time information would be extremely beneficial. Donna and Eric, one of the things that attendees hope to learn today during the webinar are the best practices that, in your experience, help ensure product integrity when dealing with a complex cold chain. What are those best practices, and what value does your organization, respectively, Testo and then AFFI, provide to help the food industry manage this complexity? Donna, what does AFFI bring to the table, and what are some of those best practices from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Food safety continues to be a big challenge, I think, for the entire food industry. And we recognize that Listeria monocytogenes and its prevalence in the frozen food industry, whether it be in our facilities or in distribution centers where our products are held, or in the trucks that it's transported in, control of Listeria monocytogenes can be, again, a tremendous challenge for the frozen food sector. So with that in mind, we dedicated a significant amount of our resources and attention to creation of best practices in areas of food safety that we think will develop the best, Listeria control program. So a member of my team has really kind of taken the lead, Dr. Sanjay Gumala, in helping direct about 70 to 80 food safety professionals in our industry that are creating best practices, and we're about to complete this process. Best practices in sanitation, sanitary design of equipment and facilities, environmental monitoring program, setting up the best program in order to ensure you're trying to find it, seek it out, and destroy it, mitigate the risk. And then the how-tos associated with process validation. So if you have a blancher associated with producing frozen vegetables, you need to be able to develop the science that supports that you're achieving your time temperature necessary to achieve lethality of Listeria monocytogenes in those raw ingredients that are being blanched and that would be further frozen. And Eric is kind of part of that effort as well. And their company provides, some great tools that can help us with implementation of these best practices. But we intend to have these best practices completed and ready for the frozen food industry throughout the chain to be able to utilize very soon, later this fall. And I think it's going to be a very innovative tool too, taking into account that, we have to keep pace with ever-changing technology too. We're making sure that this is accessible on a platform that can provide them with many different types of tools, such as checklists, documents that give, such as a letter to your management supporting why you're dedicating resources to this effort. Also pictures of, what would be a good design related to sanitation and sanitary design. What would be a bad picture, so that you have these images and videos and how-to videos that I think it's going to provide an opportunity for being very user-friendly, but also very instructive to help mitigate the risk of Listeria in your operations.
Mm-hmm. Donna, the resource that many professionals is putting together sounds like it would be just invaluable to those within the food industry that deal specifically with cold chain. So, I know that as soon as that's ready, we would love to be able to share that with our attendees and as well as share that on our website. That sounds like a great resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric, go ahead. I'm sorry. Eric, go ahead. What has been your experience at Testo in relation to this complexity? The increasing the visibility and the focus on product temperatures is extremely important, isn't it?
Yes, Kiecha, thank you. I obviously I couldn't agree more. In the perspective that I kind of like to take in this regard, and how we approach the importance of the cold chain is these recent advancements in technology are increasing organizations' visibility of temperatures throughout the cold chain, right? By leveraging, emerging technology and sensor development. And like I mentioned before, it enables, whether they're food safety professionals, supply chain operators, or specialists, to react to situations, in as close to real time, right now as you can. And, that really enables you to begin to investigate root causes, as well as correct the problems, where in the past, it took a long time to do a lot of these investigations. It took a long time for some of these issues to even get on the radar of the right people within an organization's structure. The loss of these temperature control parameters also, can lead to, severe product, complications as well, that can negatively impact your foods, which can negatively impact your consumers' perceptions of your product or your organization. So being able to have this visibility, there are lots of potential benefits, right? Again, and I'm going to probably end up stressing this several more times, but having that visibility enables you to react rapidly to situations rather than wait for information to trickle in. You're seeing it faster, so you're able to respond faster. And if you look at things from a waste perspective, you can even see positive impacts there where, if, 10 years ago, you had challenges with certain types of refrigeration units, whether they're during transit or in stores, it may take months or weeks to identify that. And during that duration of investigation, you could potentially have a lot of product loss. Where with newer systems that improve this visibility, you're able to react a lot faster, thus reducing your waste and theoretically extending potential product shelf life. But on an even more important aspect, from a public health perspective, you can have a improved level of assurance that your system is properly working, right, and that you are effectively controlling, whether it's listeria growth in refrigerated environments, or it's another type of bacteria. You're able to have a level of assurance that your system is actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is control those risk factors.
Mm-hmm. And in the end, time and money are of the essence, as well as consumer health, but which is of the utmost importance. But from what you've said, the time savings and the money savings are really an immediate ROI. The recent advances in technology within this, the food community are really like something out of a science fiction movie. These days, technology can help optimize a cold chain with innovative monitoring techniques and tracking solutions. So my next question would be, in your experience, how can software help specifically managers and owners more efficiently manage and execute food safety practices? Eric, would you take that first?
Yeah, please. Great question. And I'll do a little bit of a shift from not necessarily just focusing on increasing visibility, but one of the things that I like to try and share with people when talking about digital quality management systems is that it enables the food safety professionals, the QA managers, and people in that with that type of job focus to focus on exception-based management, right? Where you're able to spend more time focusing on areas where there are issues rather than spreading your time out equally among various different, whether they're locations or programs, where some of these locations or systems are working just fine. They're working as desired, as designed, and there's no real need for any investigating or work or anything like that. You can begin to focus more on opportunities that need to be focused on. And I guess one example that I like to share with people is, when I was working for a retailer, the region that I worked in, we had about 180 stores, give or take, and I would spend on average, 10 hours a month just generating a usable report that I could then share with all of our regional operations teams, so that they could then go and do additional training and educational reinforcement. If I would have had the luxury to have a system like a digital quality management system that would aggregate all this information on, instead of me having to do it, I would have been able to spend all of that time actually focusing on situations that I was being notified of, an hour or so, after they happened or as they happened, so I could react faster. So I think that's really, some of the major benefit is you can really begin to spend your time where it needs to be spent.
Mm-hmm. And Donna, from your perspective, how do you see software helping managers and owners be more efficient?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, we actually are quite excited about a new program that we're working on with iSucceed, as I mentioned earlier, which is smart glass technology. Many people who saw this from a commercial standpoint probably still remember as Google Glass, but it is using augmented reality so that it actually can learn behavior. It's a glass technology that has software supported by NSF International. We're a partner with them on it allows for real-time streaming so that, we have this challenge as Eric was talking about, your time that you spend verifying information and making sure that you're developing tools that save you time from an operations standpoint. Travel for some of these QA professionals that are having to go from plant to plant, troubleshooting issues in their, either food safety or quality systems at different operations, different locations. This streaming technology associated with the glass, iSucceed glass, it does help you be everywhere in real time. So you can actually have conversations and virtually be in any of your operations around the world. In addition to, that technology also being a great tool for providing training, or in the case, not just of food safety, but you look at worker protection. So we have a lot of devices that have very sharp edges and blades, and so you can train your this smart glass technology to basically, if you see that the individual who's in charge of clearing a blade possibly is not following the best in regards to the procedures to protect their safety, it will stop them from doing that activity by, they will virtually see it in front of them and saying, stop, that is unsafe. So these type of new technologies that can allow and free up time for the food safety professionals that we work with on a day-to-day basis really are going to help us focus our resources and efforts in areas that are quite important in improving food safety and quality.
So that's that exactly what I was saying as far as about something out of a science fiction movie. That's exciting that type of technology exists and is being developed to help professionals in the food safety industry. So we'd love to hear more about that, and maybe we can do a blog post on that on FoodLogic's website to learn more and share more about that with our readers.
Absolutely.
My next question would be if you could share some examples of technology solutions that are designed to improve record keeping in food preparation or production applications. Eric, would you take that?
Sure, love to. There's been a lot of advancement, I would say, in this area, especially in the last, less than half dozen years, especially in the area of handheld, called Bluetooth or IoT-enabled devices that have the ability to whether it's automatically monitor temperatures or actually take temperature measurements. They're really beginning to change the way the food production and food service industry are able to measure and capture data at certain points, whether they're critical limits or critical control points in the food production and food preparation process. The devices are enabling, I would say, a significant improvement in data accuracy and generating a lot of efficiency at the same time, especially through the use of automated temperature monitoring equipment. But a lot of the handheld devices, when you're relying on, there's human error in a lot of these processes, right? And if you're relying on someone that, drops a bimetallic stem thermometer, picks it up, it gets knocked out of calibration, the level of assurance that you're getting good, whether it's cooking temperatures or hot holding temperatures, can be questioned. With these digital pieces of equipment, these handheld devices, you take a lot of that ambiguity out of the situation. So especially when you take a large organizations, whether they cross state borders, regional borders, national, global, it becomes a significant challenge to have any type of awareness what is or isn't being done in the paper-based systems that I would say I kind of grew up in the food safety world using and managing around. You still had to spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, well, was this done properly? Was it not? And you needed people to either fax information to you, or you needed to go to a location to go and review it. As Donna had mentioned earlier, having to travel across whatever type of geographical distance, both the time and the cost of all of that, it becomes a real factor. If you're able to have these IoT-enabled devices that can take quick, accurate temperatures and transmit the information into a centralized system, you increase, again, I'm going to go right back to that visibility piece. You're providing a level of visibility from a centralized perspective that just hasn't really been there, for professionals in our work. And the fact that you can have access to this, basically anywhere that there's a computer, you have computer access or Wi-Fi access, whether it's on a tablet or a laptop or your phone, is pretty amazing. So talk about right out of science fiction type stuff. What required me hours and hours of either driving from southeastern Pennsylvania to southern New York or Connecticut, or getting on a plane and flying to California, you could do now by just logging into a computer and saying, okay, well, oh, look, the rotisserie chickens yesterday in Glendale, Arizona were all properly cooked to the right temperature. Hot holding temperatures are fine. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And I really think that we're really on the verge of even more exciting developments. But I would say one of the most innovative components to it is the handheld devices that people have access to these days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as far as, again, back to time and money savings, there's that immediate ROI with regard to the lack of capital, or financial output from your not having to travel and not having to invest money and time into unnecessary things where those resources could be diverted elsewhere. So makes a lot of sense.
I would absolutely agree. Yeah, Kiecha, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
But I would absolutely agree. A lot of times when companies or my former coworkers or counterparts, when we're talking about these devices or these systems, and one of the first questions they ask is, oh, well, how much does that thermometer cost, or how much does that stationary logger cost? If we even get to talking about price, the ROI aspect of saying, oh, well, you would be able to stay in your office instead of having to do this, this, and this. There's absolute ROI discussions on that basic premise that, what's your time worth, right? And is it worth $80 or $100 for a thermometer? Or so.
Exactly. Donna and Eric, the term sustainability is more than just a buzzword to today's consumers. More and more people want to purchase from companies that have made a real commitment to sustainable food production, companies that have respect for animals and the farmers and the environment, that contribute to our food supply chain. So would you be able to share some examples of how technology could support sustainability initiatives? Donna?
Sure. Technology and innovation, I think, are going to change, the world. And obviously, in regards to food waste, we do think that the frozen category has a lot of attributes in that you are able to use product over time, and you're not wasting a lot of the product as you see with some other sectors. So we do think that frozen foods are a solution to food waste, but and help with that sustainability initiative and thinking that consumers have in mind. But in regards to the use of it in the supply chain, you have this happening and occurring along the supply chain, starting with farmers that are using technology such as moisture sensors and drones and to determine when they need to irrigate, developing smart irrigation systems so that they're only using the water that is necessary to ensure that the products grow and grow well, but that you're not overwatering product, that you're using detailed mapping of this, often generated by GPS technology and self-driving tractors. So from basically farm all the way through in our operations, getting devices that actually can ensure that our energy is being monitored so that we understand what is occurring and how much energy we're utilizing. We are seeing many of our members using solar and wind and recycling their waste to such as in the potato industry, where they use their potato waste to generate fuel and power for their operation. So their innovation and technology are helping the entire supply chain, again, be more sustainable in mind.
Eric, what are your thoughts on the sustainability issue?
So I would say one of the clear cut options that that technology is bringing from a sustainability perspective, I kind of mentioned it earlier, is being able to integrate temperature monitoring capabilities throughout an organization's supply chain, especially within the refrigerated storage infrastructure, is providing users, and we already have firsthand customer feedback on this, that they're, due to the improved ability to respond to temperature fluctuations through alert protocols that our system and other systems provide, they are able to respond to that situation better, and it's reducing their product waste, right? So they're able to respond faster to the situation. They can make improvements, changes, i.e. corrective actions, which is then, lowering their product loss or their product waste, and then driving, it's sort of driving or supporting their overall sustainability initiatives. Take, for example, areas that have historically, severe weather events that result in like some type of short-term power loss. If there's no temperature monitoring systems available, you really are sort of like flying blind. It's like the old example that's taught in a lot of food safety seminars or classes. If you see frost on a product, that usually is a good indicator that temperature abuse occurred at some point in the process of it, getting to that destination. If you've got automated temperature monitoring systems, the system is going to alert you so that you can begin to mitigate that situation. And the other benefit, other than reducing your spoilage or your waste, is that it's going to do a better job of helping you be in alignment with regulatory requirements that are in place now. So.
Mm-hmm. Our webinar attendees would like a clear understanding of the correlation between a detailed digital temperature history, quality assurance, and brand trust. So with that in mind, if transit temperature management is too expensive, somebody looks at the cost and they deem it just too much out of pocket to invest in. What is wrong with just having employees take and record temperatures when products show up at the dock? What's wrong with that? Donna, could you address that?
This is a risky practice. I think it's more expensive to lose product based on the quality that potentially could be jeopardized based on not ensuring that the temperature was constant through the supply chain, keeping it both safe and maintaining its quality. It's very expensive to lose it from, again, quality and food safety risks. Recalling product is more expensive, I would say, than transit temperature management. And once you actually lose that customer trust in your brand, whether you're a co-packer for a private brand or you're a consumer product brand that is recognizable by the average consumer, it's very difficult to regain that trust after you lose it for quality defects and food safety issues that arise from outbreaks or recalls. So a little bit of an investment in prevention goes a long way. And it's similar to the case of insurance. If you're doing a good job in food safety and quality, and you're measuring temperature throughout the supply chain, and you have no issues, that's a good thing. And you don't want to have to, again, regain that trust, because it's very difficult to do so.
Mm-hmm. So, Eric, this sounds almost like a better safe than sorry situation. What are your thoughts on the companies taking the risk of, if you considered a risk, taking the risk to just take and record temperatures when product shows up?
Yeah, well, I would say, some of that, maybe based on, what I would consider to be a false perception of the cost of some of the technology solutions that are available today. With recent advancements in sensor technology over the last, half dozen years, the cost of the collection instruments, or loggers is a lot of people refer to them as, it's really come down, drastically, which really provides less of a barrier of entry, even for, say, smaller, mid-size organizations. So, I think Kiecha, to your point, it's kind of like, what's your brand worth to you, or what's your company worth to you, right? Like, if we look at an example of like the recent romaine lettuce recall, let's just say you just have people taking, paper-based temperature measurements, and everything is done. You've got a supply chain person that has been working for you forever. They know they've got personal relationships with all of their vendors, or the suppliers, and et cetera. Well, what's to say that, your specific romaine lettuce supplier, didn't have some sort of issue where they lost part of a shipment, or one of their growing fields, say it's a grower, one of their fields became contaminated, and they had to, on an emergency basis, provide a different lot from, say, maybe a neighboring farm that you weren't aware of, that was involved in that recall, right? Where, according to, the discussions that you have with your vendor, they don't grow produce in that area, or they don't pull from there, where that recall occurred, but unbeknownst to you, they had to take some, from the affected area. Well, in these older, programs or systems, you basically have like two options. You do nothing, right? Which is, sort of like, scary, but a reality, because you're confident that, that your supplier is following, the right protocols, even though they made a substitute, from a supplier to them that they didn't make you aware of, or, right, you're going to err on the side of caution, and you're just going to issue a recall, as Donna said, and maybe it's necessary, maybe it isn't, and it's going to be costly. So what's a better option? Well, having some sort of traceability system, as well as a temperature measurement system, that it is going to provide you the level of connectivity throughout the various portions of the cold chain that enables you to make better real-time decisions on, do I need to pull this? Do I not? Is my product safe? Is my product not? So visibility, as I've said probably a half a dozen times today on this call so far, is really the name of the game, if you will. And the more visibility an organization has, the better off they're going to be. And that's going to, you can see it, now with the proliferation of blockchain-based, systems and information sharing. We're really at the forefront of a lot of usable information, both from a supply chain perspective, but also from a consumer's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've covered a lot of information today about the value and the power of technology, which is really a trend that's just resonating throughout the food community. So, Eric and Donna, I think you've done a fabulous job of explaining how automation really can provide a wealth of data for companies to make informed, smart decisions that can help them increase their business and improve their bottom line. So there is a solid case for that return on investment when a company chooses to actually create and implement a connected cold chain. And we've got some great questions for the two of you today. As I mentioned at the beginning of our webinar, if you have a question, you're free still to submit it. We're almost at the end of our time just because we've discussed so much today, but we did have one question that I think that we will have time to address, and then the rest of the questions we will respond to directly. So the question is, Donna and Eric, do you see blockchain technology being a viable option to ensure the best food safety practices in the future?
Eric, I'll start. I think blockchain technology shows a lot of potential, and I know that a number of retail and food companies have committed to exploring this greater opportunity to see how it can work. But again, it will depend on the quality of the data and the sharing of the data as it moves along. The information moves along with the products as they go through the supply chain. But it is showing great potential to be a solution for traceability of product and going beyond the one up, one back type of approach that we've seen related to traceability. And I think that paired with other preventive controls programs and best practices in related to food safety, that with traceability and technology and innovation, it moves us forward in regards to ensuring safer, higher quality product to the end user. And I think from a perspective of recalls and outbreak investigations, it shows, again, great potential to be able to speed those efforts along to ensure limited exposure to consumers of particularly risky products.
Eric, I wanted to ask you a quick question. We've got one more that is specific to your business, at local supplier sites and DCs to execute as required for a well-maintained cold chain. For example, how do you get them to put loggers on the truck or plane as instructed and to use them? And we just had that question submitted, so we'd love your thoughts on that.
So just to reiterate, if I understand the question properly, it's basically how to get local or small scale suppliers on board with a data logger type of temperature monitoring program.
I think so. Really, just that's exactly right. The person that submitted the question said that's what they were asking. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's a challenge, of course. One of the approaches that we have worked with a provider in Europe, or a supplier rather in Europe, is to develop like a discount process in acquiring the loggers themselves in the with the pretense that they would end up coming back to us so we can refurbish and reuse them. So that's one avenue, but it's not necessarily a one size fits all solution or scenario. Our organization's perspective is that, we would want to work with both sort of pieces of the equation, being the vendor and the receiver, if you will, or the supplier and the distribution, the distribution location, to figure out like, well, what's going to be the best fit for your situation, because it's a challenging scenario, but that's one way that we've worked around solving that dilemma.
So it's not necessarily one size fits all. I mean, every business is different, so every company might have a different type of solution or set of processes that might help them enable and encourage those suppliers and DCs to buy in.
Yeah. And that's another, one of the other things that we have the ability to do, which is, maybe our current portfolio needs a different device or level of functionality. We can partner with the two organizations or the one organization to work towards coming up with an adequate, sustainable solution if there isn't one in place yet. So it's not a one size fits all scenario, but we have worked towards a solution with someone else, and we'd be committed to working towards a solution with anyone, that has that type of situation.
Well, like I said, we've gotten so many good questions today, and our time's pretty much at the top of the hour. So what we'll do is the questions that anyone has submitted, we will make sure that Donna and Eric address those questions after the webinar via email or however they see fit. But I really want to thank both of you, Eric and Donna, for really generously offering your time and your expertise for our webinar today, Creating a Connected Cold Chain. It was a pleasure learning from both of you, and I'm sure our attendees appreciate your valuable insight. Just a few housekeeping items. We will be posting a link to this webinar on our FoodLogiq website, which will include our slides as well as the audio recording of our discussion today. So thank you again for attending, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.